I just want to take a few minutes today to update you and share with you a little bit about what's happening with our leadership collectives and share with you a little more clearly about what it is that we're doing and why. I think most of you know that there was a critical turning point in PLI in our international work. And I've been working with Scott on the international front for over 10 years now, and so have been able to see close up firsthand and walk along with Scott in all the discoveries that we've been making in international training. But a turning point came when we realized that our training team doing all of the training was just not sustainable. We had more countries and more people asking us to do training than we could ever possibly meet the demand. And so kind of out of need, realizing that we could not add enough staff and enough resources to even begin to meet the need, we introduced a new step in our training process, which was training trainers. And so we went from training large groups of people to really focusing on a few who had leadership capacity, the character and the kind of leaders we were looking for, and investing in them and allowing them to train additional trainers and then do the local training. And so we found out very quickly that it had a multiplying effect. And so over the past few years, when we saw the Spirit moving in such powerful ways and the kingdom growing, one of the conclusions was maybe we should try the format and the curriculum that we're using internationally in the U.S. And to be more in the business of training local trainers and empowering them to do the training rather than us doing all the training. And so that's what this is really about. And I'm just going to walk through a couple of slides that maybe answer some questions for you about what are leadership collectives, why are they important, what are the principles upon which we're running them, and as we do these pilots, the things that we are learning this year. And so I'm just going to walk you through a couple things. The first one is this: what is a PLI leadership collective? Well, there's a couple things: a group of pastors, spouses, and key leaders who are being trained as missional leaders. And that's not new to PLI. That's something we've been doing for some time. But the key difference is the training is being done by local leaders who have been trained and empowered by PLI using PLI curriculum and process. And that's the difference. We're training people locally to do the training rather than us doing it all the time, which is taken from our international work. These local leaders are living out what they teach and sacrificing their time and energy in order to invest in training other leaders, freely giving away what they have received. And that's really at the heart of it, that we've found around the world that leaders are sacrificing and giving generous amounts of their time and their resources to do this training. We're not paying them, and yet we see leaders all over the world who, because they believe in what they're learning and receiving and doing in this training, that they see it as simply an invaluable thing. So that's what a leadership collective is. This next slide says, why are leadership collectives important? And that's really always a critical thing, is to understand the why, what's underneath this. And there's a couple points there, but it says, because missional leadership is not hard to understand, but it is hard to do. That's one of those things that we've discovered, and we know that it's a vital part of what we're doing, is that what Jesus taught us to do in terms of making disciples, it is not hard to understand. Jesus makes it very simple for us. What it is, it's hard to do. It's a little intimidating, it's a little frightening, it requires great faith, great trust, great sacrifice, and so sometimes what we end up doing is getting all kinds of diversions and distractions because we simply are hesitant to dive into what Jesus asked us to do. And so just like the original 12 disciples, we're reminded that what Jesus teaches us is simple, but it's hard to do. And that's why we need training, but we also need training together in relationship and in collegial groups. It's easier to run programs and be busy running the church, but not fruitful. We see that all the time in ministry. Churches and pastors who are very busy, but we see no fruit. In order to do the hard work of sacrificial work of missional leadership, we need the support, encouragement, and prayer of a collegial group, a collective. And so that's what these leadership collectives are all about. It's not just about information, it's about transformation. And for that to happen, we need each other working together as we develop as missional leaders. And then finally, PLI training is more than informational, it's transformational and teaches principles to be put into practice. And that's the key. That's why these leadership collectives are so important. We need each other to put these things into practice. And so that leads me to the next slide, which says the vision. I mean, what's the picture? What are we trying to envision? And very simply, we saying it like this: a missional movement, training and multiplying missional leaders. That's what we really want to be a PLI to be a part of. We know that we are not the epicenter of a missional movement. We're not the cause of it, but we do think that PLI has a vital part of how the Spirit is moving around the world in helping create a missional movement. And we believe our part is multiplying missional trainers by having powerful transformational training that we can hand off and empower more and more trainings that has multiplying effect. So that is our vision. There's a couple of keys that are important, principles that we follow that are multiplication, because it's easy to kind of get caught up in the rhythms and the routines and the structures of addition. That's the inertia takes us in that direction. But multiplication is a kind of a counterintuitive way of thinking. So the keys are: training is accessible, providing training by local leaders to people who desire training. We want training to be accessible. And one of the things we're already discovering in our pilot programs is that often the people who are most attracted to this training are people who are overlooked and under-resourced. We see it moving quickly in immigrant communities, in urban contexts, in less church areas on the coasts, places where congregations are smaller, don't have the kind of resources, but they're passionate about God's mission. And we're also finding leaders who are experienced missional leaders, but they don't know exactly how to multiply themselves. And so having accessible training that is available even for people that don't have the resources is critical. There is no cost to our training to the participant, but requires sacrifices of local leaders and trainers who PLI and their donors are investing in. That's at the heart and soul of what we're trying to do, which is to give this away. Not charging to come to conferences, but being really donor-based. And that's what we found out is contributing immensely internationally in a multiplying effect. Investing much in the few who multiply many, rather than investing much in the many who multiply few, if any. And that's one of our principles that we just really think is important, that we find those capable leaders who are capable of multiplication and invest in them, knowing that if we invest time and resources and energy into them, there will be this multiplying effect, rather than training large groups of people who never really kind of double down and turn to multiplying missional leadership. And then the training in the curriculum is easily reproducible. Scott Rishi has done an incredible job over the past 15 years or so, really fine-tuning this curriculum, creating teaching notes, creating outlines, creating structures that we can train trainers to really have a firm grip on the curriculum and teach it well, and to teach it in ways that are not just information but transformational. These are then the commitments that we ask, because we're giving away this training and process and materials for free. We do ask from commitments from people who are going to be trainers and participants in this. Local leaders and trainers who put into practice what they are learning and share it with others. So we really want to make sure we have leaders who are living this out. They're not just espousing principles and practices, but not living it. That is critical, that they're involved in living this out. PLI entrusts local leaders and trainers with partnership responsibilities of planning, training, facilitating, and follow-up as volunteers. We see this all over the world, that people at the local level are willing to take on a lot of work and costs and responsibilities. This is where the value add comes locally, is that people are doing all that work so that we just show up and do training. They're doing all the organizational work on their side, which is a tremendous cost savings for us and makes this possible. And the third one is local leaders and trainers to commit to being trained as trainers by PLI and to use the PLI curriculum and process. If you're going to be PLI, a leadership collective, we'd ask that you follow our materials and be trained as a trainer. So those are the commitments that we asked. This slide says what is different, what has changed about this from what maybe we were formerly doing at PLI. And this is how we kind of state it in a way that hopefully is clear to people. It says, in the past, our mindset was kind of trust PLI to train you. And now what we're saying is PLI trusts you to train. It may sound like a subtle difference, but it's actually quite profound. Is that we really want to change the culture of what we're doing to we entrust you to do this training, which can then have a multiplying effect. And so we ask people to think about these questions when we're doing these pilots. We never know exactly who's all going to be coming, but in order to help them capture the vision of what these leadership collectives are, we ask them to think about who do I know that could benefit from this training, and to already start thinking not just about me being training, but a multiplying effect. Who else is not here that could be here? And then who do I know that might be a potential leadership community leader or trainer? Who do I know regionally that's already a respected leader of integrity, a missional leader that others would entrust and follow? And so we want people to start already thinking in a broader context of their region and how many people they could reach with missional training through PLI's process. And so just to give you a little bit of background about our pilots, how this is working, we identified 5 cities and are going to those cities to do training. And we're really focusing on bringing in pastors and their spouses. That is still where the heart and soul of we believe PLI is at, is training pastors. But in these pilots, we've also asked our hosts if they want to invite lay people or other leaders from the community. They're certainly welcome to come and be a part of it and to expose more people to what these pilots are all about. But our focus is on bringing pastors into this. And so we have these 5 cities that we're trying to get to this year and have them all on the calendar. We've completed our work in Houston and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We have Redwood City coming up in November, which is where I live and serve in the Bay Area. We'll be in San Diego in January, and then in Madison, Wisconsin in April. And so what we plan to do is to go to each of those cities, and then when we're done, to take a step back, to consider what we've learned and all the feedback we've gathered from those places, and then to make some refinements as we begin to launch more broadly. So after we've done that, we intend to then focus in each of those areas more on training trainers, to turn from kind of the first introductory class and to really focus on training trainers. And then after that, once we've turned and made that kind of pivot, we anticipating launching more cities depending on the capacity we have and the bandwidth. So in 26 to 27, we begin to launch more cities. And then finally, to build a network of trainers and collective leaders. We believe that having a network across the country where there's interaction and mutual encouragement is going to be an important part of this. So that's really what our collectives are about. I hope that helps you get a clear understanding of what is kind of guiding our work, what it's been born out of, the principles that we're employing, the things that we think are critical for them to happen, how we're going about this pilot program this year, and then how, once that's done, we intend to take next steps moving forward. So again, let me just say thank you for all of your support and your investments in this pilot program. We really believe that God is doing something special internationally, and that God can use it also here in the US and Canada. We've already seen some wonderful stories. Let me just give you one thing before I close. In each of our locations, people have brought people to attendance at our host locations in the US, immigrants from different countries. And in every setting, they have asked about, can you train us to go, can you come and train where we're from? One was the Marshall Islands, one was in Sudan. And rather than saying, yeah, we'll come to the Marshall Islands to do your training, instead, could you envision, you and some local leaders here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, could you envision being trained and then being the ones to take the training to the Marshall Islands? And so you can already see people's wheels start to turning to think differently. Rather than PLI being the ones who always go out and do the training, to us equipping them to do the training and the excitement and the energy that brings as they begin to think about the possibilities. We had a leader from, actually, we were surprised to see the Bishop of South Sudan, who is leading efforts in Sudan in exile in the surrounding countries. He's in charge of planting churches of refugees living in exile. He would like to see how we can equip them to bring training to in that context. So God's doing exactly what we'd hope for, which is an interconnectedness with the US and Canada through these leadership collectives around the globe.